a global mystery that's fascinated people around the world. The so-called mud flood, a hidden history recorded in stone, brick, and concrete, all seemingly buried beneath a deluge of mud. What really happened? Was it a mystery lost to history, or was there something more sinister? A global cover-up? Is this the key to unlocking the secrets of the lost Tartarian Empire? The question is, what is the mud flood theory, and why does it matter? Let's start at the beginning. As far back as the 1800s, travelers began noticing buildings around the world with their entrances set much lower than any others around them, sometimes even below street level. At first glance, they look like basements, but as you'll soon see, that's not the case. Other curious details soon became apparent as well. There were grand stone or brick buildings, some many stories tall, yet they had no discernible purpose. People would claim that these were just courthouses or meeting halls, though eyewitnesses reported that they were clearly designed as palaces or temples. And yet, official narratives held that these marvels of architecture were somehow just fairs or expositions, temporary structures that popped up overnight and vanished just as quickly after a few years. How exactly did that happen? You might ask. Well, apparently the local governors or barons had a lot of free time on their hands to spare in building projects that never lasted longer than a decade. In fact, most of these so-called fairs or expositions seem to have followed a similar pattern. They would be constructed between the late 1800s and early 1900s, right around the time when the Tartarian Empire was being dismantled. Many researchers believe that the real purpose of these fairs was to showcase Tartarian technology to a wider audience. But there was a problem. By the end of the 1800s, the population of major cities had grown significantly, so the areas around town centers, especially along the riverbanks, had been built over and repurposed for new civic functions. This meant that the once vast spaces needed for such expositions no longer existed. So instead, the ruling elite sought out cheaper land further from the city center, where large open spaces could still be found. Once the exposition ended and its usefulness was exploited, the buildings were demolished and the land reverted back to its previous state. All trace of the exposition was gone, buried under a layer of mud. This detail is crucial to understanding the full scope of the mystery because if true, it means that this wasn't just some random catastrophe that happened locally here or there. This was an event that happened around the world simultaneously. If it was man-made, it means someone wanted to hide the truth about Tartarian culture, technology, and possibly even their empire. So what's the explanation? Could there really be a global cover-up behind the New World Order? We can think of three main explanations for the mud flood. One, the mainstream explanation is simply that the buildings were buried by a gradual process of soil liquefaction. This mostly happens during earthquakes, when water-saturated soil loses its structural integrity and turns into a liquid mud. However, it usually affects small areas rather than entire cities. Liquefaction can also occur due to volcanic eruptions, landslides, or tsunamis. But again, these are typically local events. Mud flood researchers point out that the scale of destruction implied by liquefaction doesn't really make sense. Entire cities and towns would have been destroyed, not just individual buildings. Moreover, a simple earthquake couldn't explain the consistency of the mud itself, which often appears to be clay or a thick paste-like substance. The alt-history explanation is that the mud flood was a deliberate act of engineered destruction, using highly advanced technology. This falls under the umbrella of suppressed high-tech or forgotten history, depending on who you talk to. The theory goes that someone wanted to wipe out the last vestiges of the old world civilization, aka Tartaria, and so they used powerful energy weapons to liquefy the soil and bury their architecture. Potential methods for doing this include vibration frequencies generated by directed energy, or scalar tech. This could have caused the soil to lose its structural integrity without causing any damage to the structures themselves. Another possibility is electromagnetic manipulation of Earth's own telluride. currents to destabilize certain layers of the crust. Alternatively, the mud flood can have been caused by catastrophic floods that were engineered via weather control technology. This is basically the modern version of the biblical story of Noah Esar, and it fits nicely with the other tales of great floods that crop up in mythology around the world. In this scenario, the floods weren't necessarily global, but rather targeted specific regions where Tartarian settlements were located. A third, less popular explanation is that the Earth's atmosphere or magnetic field went through some sort of shift in the 1800s. This sudden change caused the deluges, soil liquefaction, and atmospheric resets. It correlates with reports of strange sky events, false sky theories, and tech suppression at the same time. So why would anyone want to cover up the mud flood? The goal was to wipe out the last physical evidence of the Old World civilization, aka Tartaria, and repurpose their architecture for the masses. By erasing history, the ruling elite could better control the future. It was a great reset of civilization, one that ushered in the industrial age and gave a new meaning to society. The old ways of life were literally buried under a layer of mud. Those who dared to challenge the New World Order were swept away, and the survivors were left to pick up the pieces. The legacy of Tartaria lives on in the ruined architecture of our cities. The grand cathedrals with spires pointing towards the heavens, or the imposing fortresses with walls surrounding their perimeters. These structures are not just relics of a bygone era. They are monuments to a forgotten history. They are symbols of a time when humans lived according to different values, different ethics, and different morals. Today, we live in a world that has forgotten the lessons of the past, a world that is obsessed with the future and the latest technologies. Yet we would do well to remember the wisdom of those who came before us. Let us learn from their mistakes and build a better future for ourselves and for generations to come. As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to see more.